Under the shadow of the Spanish Inquisition, being a woman accused of heresy, witchcraft, or even simple immodesty could lead to a fate far worse than death. Sometimes all it took was a whisper, from a neighbor, a priest, or even a family member. No proof was required. No defense was allowed. Once the accusation existed, the outcome was already decided. Known as La Suprema, the Spanish Inquisition operated with cold, mechanical efficiency. Founded in 1478 by Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile, it was originally meant to hunt religious dissent. But its power expanded rapidly, and women became some of its easiest targets. Those who stepped outside rigid social roles, midwives, healers, widows, outspoken wives, were suddenly dangerous. Many were accused of brujeria, witchcraft, or secret alliances with the devil himself. Once a woman's name appeared in an edito de fe, she vanished overnight. Guards dragged her from her home, shackled her wrists, and locked her inside damp, lightless cells. Days passed. Sometimes weeks. She was never told what she was accused of. Fear did the work long before torture began. The inquisitors were not interested in innocence. They wanted confession. Truth was irrelevant. Torture was not an excess, it was policy. Authorized as early as 1252 under Pope Innocent IV, it became a formal instrument of control under the Inquisition. Pain was not a last resort. It was a method. Justice was never the goal. Submission was. To be a woman in the hands of the Inquisition was to lose your voice entirely. Her body became the battlefield. Her silence became guilt. And her scream, inevitable. Before we continue, subscribe for more true stories of hidden history and forgotten victims the world tried to erase. The chamber was quiet, but never still. Somewhere above, a rope groaned softly as it slid through a pulley. This was the Strappado. Simple in design. A rope. A hook. A beam in the ceiling. No blades. No fire. And yet, it was one of the most feared tools of the Spanish Inquisition. Women were brought here not to be executed, but to be broken. Their wrists were bound tightly behind their backs. The rope was looped upward and fastened to their arms. At a signal from the inquisitor, the executioner lifted them into the air, suspended entirely by their shoulders. The weight did the rest. Joints tore. Muscles ripped. The body collapsed inward. There was no blood. No obvious wound. That was the cruelty of it. The Inquisition labeled the Strappado a moderate torture. It left no scars, they said. But records and survivors told another story. Nerves were destroyed. Arms became useless for life. Sometimes the executioner made it worse, dropping the victim suddenly, then yanking her back upward, multiplying the internal damage. Women who screamed were dismissed as liars. Those who stayed silent were hoisted again and again. No one knows how many women endured this. Records vanished. Names were erased. What remains are fragments, testimonies, broken bodies, and chambers built specifically to house this suffering. From the late 15th century through the 18th, Strappado devices were standard in Inquisition prisons across Spain and its colonies. To the Inquisition, this was not cruelty. It was purification. For the women, many never proven guilty, it was the beginning of a slow descent into sanctioned agony, delivered not by mobs or soldiers, but by men who believed pain could cleanse the soul. The iron spider followed. Its shape alone was enough to inspire terror, long, curved metal arms ending in cruel hooks, forged not to restrain but to destroy. Known as the Iron Spider, this device was designed specifically for women. Pain disguised as interrogation. Mounted to stone walls inside cold chambers, it awaited victims already weakened by hunger, isolation, and fear. Historical accounts suggest inquisitors targeted areas meant to humiliate as much as injure. The prongs, often heated beforehand, were pressed deliberately. The goal was never understanding. It was surrender. Records describing its use are scarce, destroyed, hidden, or deliberately vague. But evidence suggests it was used against women accused of heresy, adultery, or impurity. Unlike public punishments, the iron spider left marks that could not always be seen. Scars that lived in the mind long after the body survived. Survivors, if they survived at all, were left mutilated, their bodies permanently marked by what had been done to them. These injuries were not accidents. They were reminders, living proof of humiliation. And yet, these women were never truly tried in any legal sense. Inquisitorial courts functioned behind closed doors. Proceedings were secret. Guilt was assumed the moment a name was spoken aloud. What made the iron spider especially horrifying was how deliberately it was designed for women. While the Inquisition claimed to be saving souls, it treated the female body as both temptation and target. Control was not symbolic, it was physical. Devices like the iron spider were not improvised tools of cruelty. They were calculated instruments, used ritualistically, justified through faith, and administered as acts of devotion. The rack, stretching truth from the accused. Iron chains rattled as a woman's wrists and ankles were secured to opposite ends of a wooden frame. This device was known as La Tortura del Potro, the torture of the colt. Simple in construction. Merciless in effect. She was not convicted. She was not even proven guilty. She had only been accused. But accusation alone was enough for her body to become the battleground. The rack consisted of a rectangular wooden frame fitted with rollers at each end. Ropes bound tightly around the wrists and ankles. As the interrogators turned the rollers, sometimes slowly, sometimes with sudden violence, the ropes tightened. Limbs were pulled apart. Joints stretched past their limits. The pain did not aim to kill. It aimed to erase resistance. Under the authority of the Spanish Inquisition, formerly the Tribunal del Santo Oficio de la Inquisition, the rack was classified as moderate torture. Publicly, the Inquisition claimed spiritual correction over brutality. But surviving Precisos inquisitorials reveal a different reality. Torture was systematic, especially for women. Many could not read. Many did not understand Latin, the language in which their accusations were delivered. On the rack, confusion turned into submission. Women were particularly vulnerable. Accusations of sorcery, impurity, or moral transgression, often based on gossip or fear, were enough to justify this ordeal. Once bound, the questions began. Each denial tightened the ropes further. Confessions followed not from guilt, but from physical collapse. Some were absolved and sentenced to penance. Others were marched directly to execution. The rack drew no blood, but it dismantled lives. For the Inquisition, it was a silent accomplice, forcing truth not through reason but through rupture. The Pear of Anguish, a tool of silent terror. She sat in silence, sealed inside stone walls thick enough to swallow sound. There was no crowd, no courtroom, only torchlight, and a device later known as the Pear of Anguish. Its precise origins remain disputed, but it appears in post-Inquisition records and torture catalogs as a method of controlled devastation. Forged from iron and shaped like a closed pear, the device was divided into segmented petals. A screw mechanism allowed it to expand once inserted. Depending on the accusation, it was forced into the mouth or other bodily openings. As the screw turned, the petals spread outward, causing unbearable internal pain without visible injury. The pear was never designed to kill. It caused no external bleeding. That was the point. When used in the mouth, it silenced those accused of blasphemy or forbidden speech. For women, it was most often linked to charges of moral corruption, occult practice, or spiritual impurity. Whether fully documented in surviving Inquisition trial records or inferred from later punitive manuals, its use reflected a calculated fusion of shame, control, and violation. Though rarely mentioned outright in the official logs of the Tribunal del Santo Oficio, its inclusion in post-Inquisition ecclesiastical torture collections reveals the culture that allowed such devices to exist. The Inquisition insisted torture must not spill blood. Instruments like the pear complied perfectly, inflicting extreme pain while leaving the body intact. The physical agony was only part of the punishment. The silence it enforced was just as devastating. The act of forced insertion was not interrogation, it was domination. In a system obsessed with moral purity, suffering became ritual. The body's most vulnerable openings were weaponized, transformed into points of punishment. Women were not tortured only for what they had done, but for what authorities claimed they symbolized: temptation, corruption, defiance. Pain became a moral lesson carved into flesh. The Judgement Chair, spikes for the accused. Later texts would call it the Judgement Chair. Some named it the Interrogation Chair. Whatever the title, its purpose was unmistakable. Forged entirely from iron or reinforced hardwood, the chair was covered with hundreds, sometimes thousands, of sharp metal spikes. They lined the seat, the backrest, the arm supports, the leg braces, even the footrest itself. Once seated, the accused, most often a woman charged with witchcraft, heresy, or moral transgression, was strapped tightly into place. There was no room to move. No room to breathe freely. Iron restraints locked the wrists, ankles, waist, and neck. Any attempt to shift, even slightly, drove the spikes deeper into the skin. Surviving models of torture chairs appear across early modern Europe, but regions under inquisitorial authority preserved them with particular intent. Stillness was mandatory. Pain was constant. In some recorded cases, hot coals were placed beneath the chair, heating the iron frame until restraint became searing torment. The body was punished simply for existing within the device. The Spanish Inquisition rarely listed specific instruments by name in its official records. But regional accounts from Aragon, Castile, and the Kingdom of Naples reference the silla de interrogar, the interrogation chair, used as a form of prejudicial coercion. Its purpose was not execution. It was erosion. To weaken the will before questioning even began. Once bound to the judgment chair, the accused was ordered to confess. Silence meant hours of restraint. Resistance meant days. The chair did not determine guilt. It made refusal unbearable. This was the true power of the Inquisition. Fear weaponized through faith. Flesh disciplined through doctrine. Obedience enforced not only by death, but by devices that redefined how much suffering a human body could endure. How did religious courts justify torment in the name of salvation? Comment below. As the 16th century physician Johann Weyer, one of the few voices to oppose the witch trials, warned, "The cruelty of these men is not less than that of the tormentors of the martyrs."